What would you consider, because that sounds like, the very DIY approach. What are some things to consider when considering like DIY website templates versus like maybe a custom build or turning to an agency like us?
I think the first thing to consider is your own ability. If you're not technical at all, like if you have to ask your kids to make you a Facebook page, like you probably are better going with like a Squarespace or a Wix.
For your kids to manage.
Yeah, for your kids to manage as you guilt them into doing free labor for you. But if you're more technical and you're willing to like invest time, I think even like those solutions are pretty good for like the smallest of small businesses that just need to get a word out there and maybe doesn't even need a website, but you want it so that somebody can like search it or find it or see that it's a legit business.
Yeah.
I think if you're more willing and you have more expectations, that like WordPress is like a really easy method for like putting content on the web, and like it's just like personally I think WordPress is just better in almost every situation, unless you're planning on only managing your content. You're the only person that's going to be in there and you're willing to learn. Yeah, I'm sorry, that question got away from me. I'm just like rambling at this point.
No, it's fine. I remember one of my, like when I was in my like senior year, like you're about to graduate, final of the final classes, it was required to have a website. And I thought that was so silly because you have to like pay for it. And so I think it was a Wix website, and I just did like the lowest amount of effort because I had to have a website. But it was really easy for someone like me to just like throw up images, write something about myself. I also remember at a past job, I was in charge of updating the blog on WordPress. And that was a fairly simple learning curve. It did have its limitations. Like I found myself after a couple months being like, oh, I really want to do this. And like the developers being like, we can't. So in situations like that where you're ready to take like that next step and kind of customize a site, how would you go about that route?
I would definitely recommend WordPress because it's significantly more flexible and it tends to be a lot easier using WordPress's content management system because it's like WYSIWYG editor, which means what you see is what you get. So it's like if you use Microsoft Word, you could probably use WordPress. You just copy and paste your content. It's a lot easier. And then you have the ability to like make a lot of changes and like develop a theme or a child theme, which is like a branch off of an existing theme. And there's like all of these routes you can go. And also because WordPress is open source, there's like millions of users. It's like the most used thing for a website, period. So if you get stuck and you can Google it and somebody has answered your question and gone 4 or 5 steps past what you didn't even think you needed to know, which is really helpful when you're trying to like troubleshoot your own issues, you know?
Yeah. Well, let's say you're tired of troubleshooting and you're just like, I'm going to hire a freelancer.
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
Going the freelancer route is good if you know exactly what you need, because like a freelancer will just do what you pay them to do. Whereas like going with an agency is a larger investment, but you tend to get more back from it. You know, they might consider SEO and like who sees this and how to get the right eyes on your website. Whereas a freelancer would be like, you want a picture of your bunny on this website for Italian food. Okay, you got it.
Yeah. We've already touched on some of the like benefits versus limitations of these different platforms. But then to like dive into more like who's doing it and what route you can go if you need support or maybe not. If you're going the DIY route, like Andy already touched upon, it's a really great option if you're like a small business. You know, you're planning on doing it all yourself. You, especially if you maybe have a lot of like rotating inventory or updates, and you're going to have a lot of regular kind of maintenance things that you don't necessarily have the resources to like employ somebody to make updates to, if that's something that you don't, you know, you want to use something that you feel comfortable making those changes yourself. And a lot of if you're going to like Squarespace, Wix route, I'm not as familiar with Wix, but
I feel like they fell off.
Yeah, they were like really big
Yeah.
on as a sponsor for so many YouTube videos, and then they just dried up. They have like a lot of customer support generally, but like the main drawback is it's not as custom.
Yeah.
So do you need something custom? Maybe you don't, and you can do custom coding in these platforms, but sometimes that can impact the customer support, if they'll let you. I think it can like invalidate some of that stuff. So you'd want to be really careful to make sure that if you're in there messing with the code or not messing with doing great, wonderful things to add to the code, and then you have an issue or a hiccup that they may no longer help you.
Yeah, I think you touched on a thing that people can overlook is like the support on some of the more self-contained sites like Squarespace, where if you found like a snippet of JavaScript online and you want to add it to your website and then you have an issue, like the support for Squarespace might say, oh, well, you have all this custom code, we can't help you with your template. And that would be a big bummer if it's just you trying to figure out things.
Yeah. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. But definitely if you don't have the budget for ongoing support, like hiring people, then it is probably still the best way to go, even if you do end up hiring somebody to help you set it up in the first place. Then you have freelancer options, right? Freelancers. Should you hire a freelancer? So this is kind of the next step up. And freelancer or freelancers is one of the kind of big things here. Like, I'm sure you could find somebody who can do everything you need, but depending on what you want, it might touch upon multiple different disciplines, from having, the right content, copywriting, design, development. All those things can be entirely different people.
SEO.
You can even have more than one developer, like for front end and back end.
True.
How many? And you can have people who do both and
full stack,
full stack, baby.
That's probably more expensive to hire as well if they're full stack. Yeah.
So wide variety of abilities, price ranges. You can find something that works for you, but you just want to keep in mind that you might be working with a bunch of different people that can be a wear on your own time if you're coordinating all those different people, handing off different things, someone being like, oh, I don't have what I need, them going back, you have to like get everything all lined up. Benefits of a freelancer outside of it being potentially like your more cost-effective option is that you avoid overhead of an agency, which once again is one of the reasons the price is lower, and you get that step up of having somebody with experience and expertise to help you through it, and also you can get a more custom result if if you're getting a custom coded website or something. Another drawback to keep in mind, in addition to like the coordination efforts or maybe working with multiple people, is that maintenance. If down the line something is wrong with your website or you need something updated, depending on like their contract or how they work with people, maybe they have like a support clause or something, but they also might not. You might not have anybody there to make those updates or remedy what's going on for you.
I didn't even think about that. Like if you had a freelancer set up your site with Flash and now suddenly Flash is obsolete and you're like, help, and like they're unavailable.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Flashbacks to clients with Flash-based websites and they need to update something and you can't because it's all images.
Yeah.
Or
I don't know what that
MS
means.
Paint block right there where the new image is.
R.I.P. Flash.
Yeah. I mean, outside of like overall updates or like technology evolution, like if something breaks, whoopsie, I don't know, maybe it's just, yeah.
You need someone who knows code to look at that. If you don't know code, you can't fix that.
Yeah. And then obviously that brings us to an agency, which is kind of the highest tier that we're talking about. We are an agency, so maybe it's a little biased, but
definitely a little biased.
There are some great benefits of working with an agency. Obviously, if it's not for everyone, if you don't have the resources and like the budget for it, but if you do, it's really great to get that fully customized site, if that's something that you want and need. And you get that, like I mentioned with freelancers, you're reducing overhead, but part of that overhead is valuable in that you get more resources. You have a fully staffed, multidisciplined team in-house to coordinate. They're working directly with one another. If something comes up and it's like, oh, I thought this was a dev issue, but actually it's no, let's say it was an SEO issue and turns out it's like a dev related because it's something to do with the server. Like they can, that happened recently.
Yeah, I think one of the big strengths about going with an agency versus trying to figure out what you need by freelance is an agency will know what you need. So if you have an idea and you don't necessarily know how to execute it, an agency will be there to help you walk through the steps, or at least a good agency would be there to help you walk through the steps of what you need and give you a better idea and then execute it for you.
Yeah. And not only do we have like the connections in our company of ourselves to like work with one another, we also have other connections with like sister agencies or freelancers that we know. So you have like a really robust support system to take care of these things for you. And it takes a lot off your plate as far as like having to deal with a whole website or anything else that comes with it. You can do so much.
Or multiple freelancers that aren't communicating with each other.
Right. It's
like
still
we're
really
used to communicating.
Yeah. Like I can always be like, hey Andy, is this like okay? Like, is this gonna super increase dev time? Or is this idea, how long will that take? Because I want to like stay within budget, and like even checking things like that. If you have like a designer and a freelance and a developer who aren't working together as freelancers and not communicating, and there's something that the developer's like, oh, this is going to take a bunch of time to do. Does it still fit within your budget? It's like, well, now you have to go back to design and change things. We're constantly checking in, coordinating, etc. And it helps a lot. And it also does save time within the agency ultimately, because like I know how to like prepare stuff for our developers. Because, like, we do it all the time.
Yeah, I think when we get, like, a design that isn't in-house and it's, like, a single PDF that is, like, 12 pages long and, like, none of the art assets are exportable and, like, it's a nightmare. And it's, like, I don't want to recreate your art asset from scratch with, like, Shutterstock watermarks on it. It definitely helps when the designer knows what they need to design for the web to create the website you want.
Yeah.
The agency is that machine. Like we all represent different parts that kind of run smoothly together.
Yes. We're all cogs in the machine in a good way.
Yeah.